In the beginning, we see many workers along a coastal area, all busy getting ready for their next voyage out to sea. Among them is a man named James, who is finding it hard to pull himself away from his family. But work is work, and he has no choice. We are also introduced to two other men, Thomas and Donald, who will be making this trip alongside James. They load up their gear onto a boat and set off toward a remote island known as Flannan Isle. James, Thomas, and Donald have been assigned a 6-week duty at the Mojo Lighthouse station there. For those 6 weeks, they will have no contact with the outside world whatsoever. These 3 men are lighthouse keepers. They reach the island before long. The officers from the previous shift hand over all responsibilities to Thomas. Before leaving, they also say a quiet prayer for him. Thomas's wife passed away not long ago, and the grief is still very much with him. With the handover complete, the 3 men gather their supplies and make their way up to the lighthouse. Once inside, James begins showing Donald the ropes, since Donald is still quite new to this line of work. That night, a powerful storm rolls in. The fierce winds cause a problem with the lighthouse's internal system, so the 3 of them rush out to investigate. They discover that mercury has leaked from the machinery. Pulling on their protective gear, they carefully collect every drop and work to return it to the machine. Once that is sorted, the mechanism kicks back into life and the lighthouse beam begins its slow, steady rotation once more. The next morning, Thomas sends the other 2 outside with shovels. Donald steps out and immediately sees the aftermath of the storm. Dozens of birds lie dead across the grounds, killed by the violent winds overnight. They have to clear the area, and so they begin filling sacks with the birds. Strangely enough, there is supposed to be a small celebration that evening. But then the lighthouse dog starts barking frantically. They go to check, and find that a man had washed up to the island during the storm in a small boat. They lower Donald down on a rope to get a closer look. Donald checks the man and finds no signs of breathing. He begins tying the man's chest to the rope to send it up. Then the man suddenly lurches upright and attacks Donald. Donald, fighting for his life, grabs a rock and strikes the man in the head. The man goes still. Donald is shaken to his core. Thomas puts a hand on his shoulder and tries to calm him down. Meanwhile, James cannot stop thinking about what might be inside that chest. But Thomas firmly refuses to let anyone open it. He has a gut feeling it will only bring trouble. That night, Donald cannot sleep. Every time he closes his eyes, he sees the moment that man went down. Thomas sits with him and tells him gently what happened was self-defense. Donald has nothing to feel guilty about. Then Thomas begins to open up about his own life. He tells Donald about his wife, Kathy, beautiful, kind, the love of his life. They had twins together, but the children died first, both of them. And then, years later, Kathy was taken too. Thomas says quietly that he has learned to carry that pain. He has no other choice. Donald breaks down in tears listening to Thomas's story. Later that night, something stirs in Thomas. He gets up quietly, walks over to the chest, and opens it. Inside, gold bars. Rows of them. Thomas stares at them for a long moment, then closes the chest and walks away. He is now almost certain the man Donald killed was either a thief or, worse, a pirate. The next morning, James, who fancies himself quite the cook, makes breakfast for everyone. Over the meal, Donald says he wants to know who that man really was. Why would someone fight to the death over a chest? Thomas still does not want the chest opened. But Donald pushes back. He says there is clearly something very valuable in there. And if there is, they have a serious problem because whoever that man was, his companions will come looking for him. And when they do, they will be looking for the chest too. Thomas tells them firmly, the chest stays closed. End of discussion. But then something catches his eye. He picks up the binoculars and looks out toward the water. 2 unfamiliar figures are approaching the island, scanning the area as they move. Thomas knows immediately, these are the dead man's crewmates, and they have come for the chest. His stomach drops. He turns around, and his heart sinks even further. Behind him, James and Donald have already opened the chest without his permission. They are staring at the gold bars with wide eyes, practically giddy. In their minds, they are already rich. Thomas tells them urgently, 2 men are on their way to the island right now, looking for exactly what is sitting in front of them. They need to return the chest.
to get off this island. We have no chance.
Anger rising in his voice. That man nearly killed him last night. As far as he is concerned, the gold is theirs, payment for what they went through. Thomas tries to reason with them. He explains that they cannot hide this kind of wealth even if they want to. The moment they try to sell even one gold bar, someone will notice. And if they are lucky, people will only be suspicious. New clothes, a new house, money where there was none before, people talk. It does not take long for questions to start. Donald does not want to hear it. He has made up his mind. Thomas says he refuses to throw his life away for someone else's greed. A heated argument breaks out between him and Donald, with James stuck in the middle trying to keep the peace. Thomas says he does not need the gold. He will not let a moment of temptation destroy everything he has left. If they want to get themselves killed, that is their choice, but he wants no part of it. He walks out and stands at the edge of the cliff, looking out at the sea for a long time. Then he comes back. He tells them if they do exactly what he says, they can make this work. They will dispose of the man's body and keep the gold hidden. When the next shift arrives in a few weeks, each of them will quietly pack their share of the gold in their backpacks and return to the mainland. Once there, they will sit on it for at least a year, no spending, no talking, no slip-ups. After that, they can sell the gold in Edinburgh and walk away wealthy. But not a single word to anyone. Not friends, not family. Act as though the gold never existed. Behave completely normally, the same as always. They agree. And the three of them begin moving the body toward the sea. But then Thomas spots a boat heading straight for the island. He tells James to hide the body immediately, and the chest along with it. They scramble, stashing everything out of sight just in time. Two men step off the boat and walk up to Thomas. They ask him calmly whether he has seen their crewmate, a man who may have come ashore during last night's storm. Thomas keeps his face completely still and tells them he has no idea what they are talking about. He has not seen anyone. Their names, it turns out, are Locke and Boar. Boar is exactly what his name suggests, rough and intimidating. Locke is quieter but more persistent. He keeps pressing, and eventually Thomas gives a little ground. He tells them that they did come across a lifeboat that appeared to belong to someone, and a chest along with it. Thomas tells them that along with their crewmate's body, everything, the body and the cargo, has already been sent to the mainland following standard protocol. But Boar does not buy a single word of it. Despite his suspicion, both Boar and Locke climb back into their boat and leave. Donald watches them closely from the island until they are out of sight. Meanwhile, Thomas and James head back inside the lighthouse and manage to repair the radio, which had been knocked out during the storm. But almost immediately, they begin picking up voices on the radio. It is Locke and Boar. The moment Locke left the island, he had tried to reach the lighthouse by radio, testing whether Thomas had truly contacted the mainland or not. When no one answered for a long stretch of time, Locke put it together. If the radio was broken during the storm, how could Thomas have possibly reported anything to the mainland? Thomas had lied to his face. Locke turns the boat around and heads straight back to the island. Donald's face goes pale. The three of them brace themselves for what is coming. From the water, Boar opens fire with unusual ammunition, but whatever he is shooting, it has no real effect on Thomas and the others. When night falls, Locke begins circling the island slowly with the boat, looking for the right moment to come ashore. Thomas watches the pattern and realizes quickly, the boat is just a decoy. The real threat has already landed. He is right. When Thomas and Donald make their way back to the lighthouse, Locke is already inside waiting for them. He grabs Thomas and beats him without mercy. Then he leans in close and tells him, hand over the chest, and they walk away alive. Thomas says nothing, so Locke keeps going. At the same time, Boar gets to Donald and knocks him unconscious. But then James arrives. He throws himself at Boar with everything he has, and after a brutal, exhausting struggle, he manages to overpower the massive man and choke the life out of him. Across the room, Donald seizes his moment. He loops a rope around Locke's leg and pulls, bringing him down for good. Both men are dead. The three of them sit down, bruised and breathless, and try to think clearly. There are now 3 dead bodies on the island. They themselves are badly hurt. And when the next shift of lighthouse keepers arrives, hiding any of this will be next to impossible. Then Donald freezes. He has spotted something through the window. There is someone else out there, another one of the robbers still on the island. They go out to search. James catches a glimpse of a figure running and gives chase. He catches up and strikes the person down with his weapon. Then he looks at what he has done, and the world stops. The robber is a child. James drops to his knees. A small child, barely older than his own son. He killed a child. The realization tears through him like a knife, and he breaks down completely, sobbing and shaking where he kneels. The next morning hangs heavy over all of them. James has not been the same since last night. He is moving through the day like a hollow shell, as though something inside him has simply switched off. Thomas tries to reach him, telling him gently that it was dark, he could not have known, and he carries no blame for what happened. But the words bounce off. James is already somewhere else, somewhere no one can pull him back from. Thomas is not doing much better himself. They drag the bodies of the robbers down to the boat, planning to take them out to sea and drop them where no one will ever find them. But when James sees the child's body up close, the size of him, the age of him, his face crumbles all over again. When they return to the island, James starts wandering after the dog with a blank, distant look in his eyes. Donald watches him and pulls Thomas aside. He says James has lost his mind, and that is a serious problem. In this state, he might say something to someone, tell them everything about the gold, the killings, all of it. Thomas snaps at Donald. He tells him it is shameful to think that way about a man who is suffering. But Donald has already made his decision. He wants to leave right now using the robber's boat. He is done with this island, done with all of it. Thomas tries once more to get through to James. James looks at him with empty eyes and says he cannot feel anything anymore. He says it feels like his soul is gone, like he is a sinner who deserves nothing good. Later, when James catches sight of Thomas and Donald talking together, something breaks in him. In his fragile state, it looks to him like his two friends are plotting to leave him behind. That night, James and Donald get into a vicious fight. Donald, in his frustration, calls James a madman and a child killer. That word, child killer, pushes James over the edge. He screams back at Donald, calling him nothing but a greedy, selfish man who brought all of this down on them and does not care who gets destroyed along the way. Thomas steps in and separates them, but the damage is done. The tension between all three is unbearable now. James disappears into the small chapel on the island and refuses to come out. Thomas brings him breakfast the next morning and slides the plate toward the door. James reaches out and pulls it inside. Thomas speaks to him softly through the door, telling him to try to let the pain dull over time, that carrying it this sharply will only destroy him. Meanwhile, Donald finishes packing his belongings and comes to find Thomas. He says he is leaving and that Thomas is welcome to come with him if he wants. He is not asking for permission. James overhears every word. He says nothing, gives no sign that he heard anything at all. But the moment Donald's guard drops, James moves. He wraps his hands around Donald's throat and does not let go. Donald, the one who started all of this with his greed and recklessness, is dead. Thomas stands there in shock and grief. He picks up a pot and strikes James, knocking him out. When morning comes, James is conscious again. Thomas tells him plainly, he has already moved the gold onto the boat. They are leaving immediately. If they stay, there is no way to explain Donald's death without everything unraveling. James nods. He helps Thomas carry Donald's body to the boat, and together they drop him into the sea, just as they had done with the robbers. But letting Donald go hits Thomas harder than he expected. Despite everything, he had come to care for that foolish, stubborn young man almost like a son. And James, whatever was left of him after all of this, is gone now too. He tells Thomas quietly that he does not want to live anymore. Thomas pleads with him. He tells him not to give up, that things can still get better, that there is still a life worth living on the other side of all this pain. James does not hear him. He steps off the edge of the boat and drops into the water. Thomas lunges for him, but James looks up at him from the water.